Hi, friend. It's good to see you. My text today is not from an ancient source. In fact, it is actually from a New York Times guest editorial from just 2 days ago. Written by the modern author Dara Horn. And it addresses the current situation and the current feeling that many of us have been experiencing in these days following the horrific Simchat Torah attack in Israel. The attack that took place on the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah, the Jewish holiday where we end and begin the Torah in joy. She writes in her article titled, Why Jews Cannot Stop Shaking Right Now. She writes, the feeling of deep dread that these atrocities stirred in Jews is horribly familiar. This is what Jewish history has all too often look like. Not civilians tragically killed in war, but civilians publicly targeted, tortured, and murdered, with the crimes put on public display. Accounts, she writes, of past killings are folded into our Jewish tradition. On Yom Kippur, every Yom Kippur, we recount the public torture and execution of rabbis by their Roman oppressors. That took place in a 2nd century stadium. Those ancient stories are consistent with the experiences of the more immediate ancestors of nearly every Jew who is alive today. She writes in her editorial that for us living today, American Jews and diaspora Jews, the recent attacks were not distant overseas events. As was true in ancient times, our ties between global Jewish communities in Israel are concrete, specific, intimate, and personal. We've heard this repeated very often by our Jewish community who has felt the impact of what recently happened. And we, of course, must physically carry on. But we ask the question, how do we carry forward? How and what do we do to carry forward? Now, Ms. Horn in her article brings a beautiful example. And I'll contribute one other example to our discussion of the complicated feelings we're feeling right now. She reminds us of our tradition on Simchat Torah, the very day that this atrocity began. Simchat Torah, the very weekend that this atrocity began. Our tradition is that when we complete the Torah, when we complete the reading of the Torah, we immediately begin again. We begin again. We are the people who begin again. And it's important for us to begin the story again every year, because what do we get in that very beginning of that story that is our most ancient story, our story of our people? What we get is a reminder that we, humanity, are created in God's image. I'll add to her metaphor that what we also get is portrayed in this week's Torah portion. We get a character like Abraham, who we learn about in this week's Torah portion, who is a man of such deep faith that he is willing to step forward on a journey for which God does not tell him exactly where he will go. We, in fact, are on a journey, our own personal journey in life, where we are not sure where we will go. We are not sure exactly what the direction ahead will take us. And yet, we begin again. We remember that our ancestor completed his journey, and we are encouraged to have faith to begin our journey again. Again, from a modern source, this time not a Jewish source, I share with you a little quote from Harriet Beecher Stowe. It is said that sometimes gardeners, when they would bring a rose to richer flowering, deprive it for a season of light and moisture. Silent and dark it stands, dropping one faded leaf after another and seeming to go down patiently. But then, when every leaf is dropped and the plant stands stripped to the uttermost, a new life is even then working in the buds, from which shall spring a tender foliage and a brighter wealth of flowers. So often, we must remember that the future may have a brighter wealth of flowers. Friends, I invite you to join me for the Mourner's Cottage now on the screen. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah. Bi'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechan v'yomechan v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'izman kariv v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam le'amei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitboar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yidadar v'yidaleh v'yidalal shemei d'kudishah barichu. Li'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata damiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom